No one at the academy noticed the silence at first. They were too busy laughing. The training hall echoed with alien voices, sharp and cruel, bouncing off steel walls polished by centuries of combat. In the center of it all stood a human girl, small by galactic standards, surrounded by creatures built for war. She did not cry. She did not shout. She only stood there, shoulders straight, eyes calm, as if she had already accepted something the rest of them could not understand. That calm would become their greatest mistake. The Virelian Combat Academy was not a place for mercy. It trained the strongest soldiers, tacticians, and enforcers in known space. Species from dozens of worlds sent their best here. If you survived 4 years inside these walls, you earned respect across the galaxy. Humans were new. Too new. When the Terran Alliance earned limited admission rights, most species saw it as a political gesture, not a serious decision. Humans were soft. Low-gravity origin. No claws. No armor. No enhanced senses. They looked like something meant to be protected, not trained for war. That was why Lyra Hale stood alone. She was 17 by human count, shorter than almost everyone in the hall, wearing standard grey training gear that hung loose on her frame. Her dark hair was tied back neatly. No weapons. No enhancements. Just a quiet presence that most students ignored, until today. Today, Korath noticed her. Korath of the Drake Thigh was a living symbol of Academy dominance. Over 7 feet tall, plated in natural black armor, with 4 arms and a jaw strong enough to crack alloy. He had never lost a sanctioned match. His family funded entire wings of the academy. Instructors tolerated him. Students feared him. He stepped into the sparring circle without invitation. "Human," he said, his voice vibrating through the floor. "You've been here a month and haven't fought once." The room grew quiet. Lyra looked up. Her eyes were steady, unreadable. "I'm not required to spar today," she said. That was all. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Korath tilted his head, amused. "You hear that? The human thinks rules protect her." He moved closer. Every step felt heavy, deliberate, predatory. "You hide in corners. You train alone. You watch instead of fight," he continued. "That's fear." Lyra shook her head once. "That's patience." The laughter grew louder. Above them, Instructor Malrex watched from the elevated platform. He was of the Sherry, tall and thin, with 3 narrow eyes and decades of experience. He saw the confrontation. He saw the crowd forming. And he did nothing. Sparring challenges were allowed. Both parties had to agree. Lyra had not yet refused. Korath leaned down until his shadow swallowed her. "Fight me. Or leave the academy." Silence returned. Every student knew what this meant. Refusal would mark her as weak forever. Acceptance would end in pain. Maybe worse. Lyra glanced once toward the observation platform. Instructor Malrex met her gaze. He hesitated. That hesitation would haunt him. Lyra stepped forward into the circle. The energy barrier flared to life, sealing them inside. Students pressed closer. Some activated recording devices. This would spread fast. Korath rolled his shoulders, flexing all 4 arms. "Try not to die," he said. Lyra took her stance. Not a standard academy form. Her feet were light. Her hands relaxed. Her breathing slow. The signal sounded. Korath attacked instantly. He moved faster than something his size should, crossing the distance in a blur of armor and muscle. 4 fists came down with crushing force, aimed to end the fight in one strike. Lyra was not there. She slipped sideways with minimal movement, letting the attack pass through empty space. The floor cracked where Korath struck. Before he could recover, she stepped in. Close. Too close. Her elbow drove into a narrow gap beneath his chest plating. Not hard. Precise. Korath staggered. The crowd froze. He roared in shock and swung his tail. Lyra ducked beneath it, rolled, and rose behind him. Her palms struck the base of his spine. Korath's tail dropped uselessly to the floor. Confusion rippled through the hall. This was not luck. This was knowledge. Korath turned, furious now, launching a storm of blows. His strikes were textbook Drakethai, powerful, aggressive, relentless. Lyra moved like water. She didn't block strength with strength. She redirected. Stepped inside angles no one else dared. Each motion stole balance, breath, control. She was reading him. Predicting him. Instructor Malrex stood. His hand hovered over the emergency stop. But he waited. Korath landed a glancing blow. Lyra slid back, boots scraping the mat. A thin line of blood appeared on her lip. The crowd cheered. Korath grinned. There you are. Fragile. Lyra wiped the blood away with the back of her hand. And sighed. What happened next felt different. Her movements changed. Still controlled, but faster. Sharper. Purposeful. She struck nerves. Joints. Weak points hidden beneath armor. Places no academy manual mentioned. Korath slowed. His breathing grew heavy. Fear crept into his eyes. The strongest student in the academy was losing control. Instructor Malrex realized something then. This human was holding back. The realization came too late. Lyra swept Korath's leg. He crashed to the mat. Before he could rise, she placed one knee on his chest and her fist inches from his throat. Silence consumed the hall. She could end him. She didn't. She stood and stepped away. I don't fight for entertainment, she said calmly. I fight to survive. The barrier dropped. Instructor Malrex finally activated the stop. But the damage was already done. The academy had learned something terrifying. Humans were not weak. They were restrained. And restraint, once broken, was far more dangerous than strength. The silence after the fight felt heavier than the impact that dropped Korath to the floor. No one cheered this time. Students stood frozen, staring at the human girl who had just dismantled the academy's most feared fighter without killing him. Some lowered their recording devices. Others forgot they were even holding them. Korath lay on the mat, gasping, pride shattered, armor cracked in places no one believed possible. Med drones rushed in, lifting him gently, as if the academy itself was afraid to touch what remained of its illusion. Lyra Hale stood alone near the edge of the circle. She looked tired. Instructor Malrex descended from the platform at last. His long strides ate up the distance quickly, his face tight with emotions he had not felt in years. Anger at himself. Shock at what he had witnessed. And something else. Respect. Human, he said, stopping a few steps away. Explain. Lyra met his eyes. Explain what? That, he said, gesturing to the sparring circle, to the stunned students, to the broken Drakethai being carried away. I defended myself, she replied. Within academy rules. She was right. Malrex knew it. Everyone did. That fact disturbed him more than the fight itself. The hall slowly came back to life. Whispers spread in every language. Fear mixed with excitement. Something had changed, and everyone could feel it. Malrex raised his voice. Training is over. All students dismissed. Reluctantly, the crowd broke apart, though many glanced back at Lyra as they left. Not with laughter now. With caution. Lyra gathered her things quietly and walked toward the exit. Lyra Hale, Malrex called after her. You will report to my office after evening cycle. She nodded once and kept walking. Word traveled faster than light inside the academy. By the next day, Lyra was no longer invisible. Students who had never noticed her now watched from a distance. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Training partners suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Fear had replaced mockery. The Academy Council met in private. Footage of the fight played again and again from different angles. Tactical analysts slowed it down, highlighting movements, strikes, decisions. None of it made sense to them. She doesn't rely on strength, one counselor said. She dismantles. That style isn't taught anywhere in the Alliance, another replied. She targets biological vulnerabilities with surgical precision, a third added. She knew Drakethai anatomy better than most Drakethai. Instructor Malrex remained silent. He had reviewed Lyra's admission file the night before. What he found unsettled him. Earth was not a peaceful world. It was a world shaped by constant conflict. Wars that never truly ended. Environments that punished weakness. A species that evolved without claws or armor had learned something else instead. Adaptation. Creativity. Violence refined into efficiency. Lyra's record was sparse. No championships. No official combat leagues. Just a note buried deep in the file. Civilian survivor. Multiple conflict zones. She had not been trained for glory. She had been trained to live. That evening, Lyra stood in Malrex's office. The walls were lined with trophies, medals, and historical weapons from across the galaxy. "Why didn't you report your capabilities?" Malrex asked. "Because no one asked," she said calmly. "That's not an answer. It is where I come from." Malrex studied her. "Korath could have killed you." She nodded. "Yes." "And yet you stepped into the circle." "Yes." "Why?" Lyra's gaze hardened slightly. "Because if I kept backing away, someone weaker than me would be next." That answer hit harder than any strike. Malrex dismissed her with a warning and a quiet recommendation. She would be observed more closely now. Too closely. The next challenge came 3 days later. This time, it was not Koratha's friends or bullies looking for entertainment. It was the Academy itself. A formal evaluation was issued. Lyra was ordered to participate in a multi-species combat exercise designed to test limits under pressure. No refusals allowed. 5 opponents. Different species. Different strengths. A public demonstration. Lyra understood the message clearly. They were testing her. Or trying to break her. The arena was larger than the sparring hall, with elevated seating filled by instructors, analysts, and high-ranking guests. This was not training. This was judgment. Lyra stood at the center alone. Across from her, the opponents entered one by one. A Calder brute with bone-plated arms. A Thesheri speed striker with bladed limbs. A Virelian psionic disruptor. A Manthex grappler built like a living net. And finally, a synthetic combat drone. 5 different ways to die. The signal sounded. Chaos erupted. They attacked together. Lyra moved. Not faster than them. Smarter. She used the environment. Forced collisions. Redirected attacks. Turned their strengths into obstacles. When the psionic disruptor focused her mind, she took cover behind the drone, letting its systems overload instead. One by one, they fell. Not unconscious. Not broken. Disabled. Controlled. By the time the exercise ended, Lyra was breathing hard, bruised, bleeding from a cut above her eye. But she was standing. The arena was silent again. Malrex felt the weight of a truth settle over the Academy. Humans were not anomalies. They were a warning. A species shaped by adversity into something the galaxy had never prepared for. And Lyra Hale was just one of them. Somewhere beyond the Academy walls, powers were already paying attention. And soon, they would come asking questions. The first message arrived before dawn. It was not addressed to Lyra Hale. It was addressed to the Academy. A priority transmission, sealed and encrypted, stamped with the insignia of the Galactic Security Council. Instructor Malrex watched the symbol pulse on his terminal and felt something tighten in his chest. They had seen the footage. Not just the fight with Korath. Not just the evaluation exercise. All of it. The way the human moved. The way she adapted. The way she chose restraint instead of dominance. That frightened them more than raw power ever could. By midday, representatives arrived. Tall ones. Armored ones. Ones who smiled too politely and asked too many questions. They toured the Academy, praised it reminded him of predators pretending to be diplomats. Lyra was ordered to remain in her quarters. She obeyed. She always obeyed. That did not mean she was calm. She sat on her bunk, hands resting on her knees, eyes closed, breathing slow. The room was small, metal walls bare except for a single human flag folded neatly on the shelf above her bed. A quiet reminder of home. Of places she had survived. Outside her door, security doubled. Inside the academy, fear spread quietly. Students whispered in training halls. Some looked at Lyra with awe now. Others with resentment. A few with hatred. Because one human had disrupted centuries of certainty. When Malrex finally entered her room, he did not sit. "You are being reassigned," he said. Lyra opened her eyes. "To where?" "Observation status," he replied. "You will train separately. Limited interaction." "Because they're afraid," she said. Malrex didn't deny it. "They want to understand you," he said carefully. "And control what you represent." Lyra stood. "I didn't come here to represent anything." "That," Malrex said softly, "is exactly why they're nervous." The next test was not physical. It was political. Lyra was summoned to a council chamber filled with beings who had never held a weapon but had ended wars with words. They asked about Earth. About human doctrine. About whether her combat style was taught widely. Lyra answered honestly. "No," she said. "Most humans aren't like me." That made them relax. "But," she added, "any human can become like me." That made them very quiet. "What would cause that?" one counselor asked. Lyra looked around the room. Threats. Injustice. Survival. The meeting ended shortly after. The next message came from outside the academy. A Drakethai clan demanded restitution for Koratha's humiliation. A Manthex delegation requested access to human combat data. A private military corporation offered Lyra a contract worth more credits than she had ever imagined. She declined all of it. That worried them even more. The academy began to fracture. Some instructors argued Lyra should be expelled to maintain balance. Others believed she should be protected at all costs. A few whispered something dangerous. Weapon. The turning point came during a routine night cycle. Lyra felt it before the alarm sounded. Her door slid open. Not forcibly. Clean access. Professional. 3 figures stepped inside. No academy markings. No official insignia. Black armor. Quiet movements. Purpose. Lyra rolled from her bunk as the first stun round scorched the wall where her head had been. She grabbed the nearest attacker's wrist, twisted, disarmed him, and used his own weapon to drop the second. The third hesitated. That hesitation saved his life. Instructor Malrex burst through the door seconds later, weapon drawn, eyes wide. The attackers were restrained. Interrogation revealed the truth. They were not assassins. They were extractors. Someone wanted Lyra off the academy. Off the record. Quietly removed before the galaxy had to deal with the implications of humanity's potential. The council erupted. Security protocols were rewritten overnight. And Lyra finally understood. She was no longer just a student. She was leverage. Malrex met her in the training hall the next day. Empty. Silent. "They will try again," he said. "I know," Lyra replied. "You could leave," he offered. "Request transfer. Go home." Lyra shook her head. "If I leave, they'll find someone else. Another human. Another excuse." She looked up at him. "This doesn't end by hiding." Malrex studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Training intensified. Not just physical. Strategy. Psychology. Ethics. Lyra was paired with analysts, not fighters. She learned how the galaxy thought. How it justified cruelty. How it feared change. And she learned something else. The Academy wasn't afraid of humans because they were strong. It was afraid because humans adapted faster than systems could control. The next public event was announced a week later. An inter-academy demonstration. Broadcast across dozens of systems. Humans versus elite composite forces. A test of compatibility. A lie wrapped in ceremony. Lyra was named team lead. 5 humans. No enhancements. No alien tech. Against a mixed squad of the best the Academy could field. Students filled the stands. Millions watched across the galaxy. Lyra stood at the front of her team, calm as ever. When the signal sounded, she did not charge. She raised a hand. Her team waited. The enemy advanced confidently. Then Lyra smiled. And the galaxy learned the most dangerous truth of all. Humans don't fight alone. They coordinate. They trust. They adapt together. What followed was not a battle. It was a lesson. And by the time it ended, the idea of human weakness was dead, buried under precision, cooperation, and unbreakable will. The Academy had tried to test humanity. Instead, it had announced it. The broadcast did not end when the match did. It multiplied. Across star systems, the footage replayed again and again. Analysts slowed it down. Commentators argued. Militaries took notes. Civilian networks reacted with disbelief. 5 humans had defeated an elite composite unit without overwhelming force, without advanced technology, without casualties. They had won through coordination, through trust, through adaptability. That scared the galaxy more than anything Lyra had done alone. Inside the Academy, the reaction was immediate and divided. Some students applauded openly now. Others avoided the humans entirely. A few began training harder than ever, desperate to close a gap they had only just discovered. The council convened an emergency session. "This changes balance," one member said. "This accelerates instability," another argued. "We cannot allow a precedent without oversight." The word oversight echoed. Lyra stood at the center of it all, listening quietly as beings who had never faced extinction debated the value of restraint. Malrek stood behind her, silent, arms folded. "What happens now?" Lyra asked when they finally turned to her. A counselor replied, "Now we decide how humanity fits into the galaxy." Lyra nodded slowly. "Humanity already fits. You just didn't notice." That answer did not go over well. Orders were issued that same day. Human students would be separated for safety. Joint training would be restricted. Data access would be limited. Containment without calling it containment. The humans noticed immediately. They met that night in a quiet maintenance corridor beneath the Academy. 5 of them. Different backgrounds. Different accents. Same understanding. "They're scared," one said. "They should be," another replied. Lyra listened, then spoke. "We don't push. We don't provoke. We stay visible, calm, and united." "And if they push?" someone asked. Lyra's eyes hardened. "Then we remind them what restraint means." The push came sooner than expected. A week later, an unscheduled drill was announced. Mandatory participation. Live combat parameters. External observers. Too many red flags. Lyra requested clarification. Denied. Malrex protested. Overruled. The arena was different this time. Heavier security. Armed sentries. Council observers seated behind energy shields. This was not a test. It was a message. Lyra felt it the moment the barrier locked. Her team was smaller than before. 3 humans only. Opposite them stood something new. Not students. Enforcers. Licensed combat specialists equipped with suppressor tech designed to counter adaptive fighters. Neural dampeners. Predictive targeting systems. Weapons calibrated to disable, not kill. They were here to prove a point. The signal sounded. The enforcers moved in perfect synchronization. Lyra raised her hand. Her team split. What followed was not elegant. It was desperate. Suppressor fields distorted movement. Predictive systems adjusted faster than before. One human went down hard, stunned and dragged aside. The crowd watched in tense silence. Lyra adapted. She always did. She used the Enforcer's coordination against them. Forced overlap. Overloaded systems with unpredictable timing. Took hits meant to create openings for others. Pain flashed through her shoulder. Her leg went numb. She stayed standing. The last Enforcer hesitated. That was all it took. The fight ended with Lyra on one knee, breathing hard, blood on the mat. But standing. The message failed. And now everyone knew it. The council was furious. Security chiefs argued. Political representatives demanded accountability. And outside the academy, something shifted. Human worlds reacted. Not with threats. With unity. Statements were issued. Access agreements reviewed. Military observers quietly withdrew from joint programs. The galaxy began to realize something too late. Humans were not asking for permission. They were assessing trust. Malrex met Lyra in the infirmary. They crossed a line, he said quietly. Yes, Lyra replied. And now they're afraid of the answer. What answer? Lyra looked at her bandaged hands. What happens when restraint is treated as weakness for too long? The final escalation came not from the council. It came from outside. An unknown fleet appeared at the edge of the system. No transponder. No declaration. Heavily armed. A rogue coalition. Opportunists. They had seen the broadcasts. They wanted human assets. The academy went into lockdown. Students were evacuated. Shields raised. Defense systems activated. Lyra stood in the command center as alarms echoed. They're not here for the academy, Malrex said. They are here for you. Lyra nodded. Then they'll have to face all of us. Human, alien, student, instructor. Lines that once mattered blurred. The attackers underestimated one thing. Not humanity. Unity. The academy fought back. Not as species. As survivors. Lyra coordinated defense like she had trained her team. Calm, precise, adaptive. She didn't command through authority. She listened. And the attackers broke against that. When the last hostile ship retreated, the system was silent again. The council had no words left. The galaxy had its answer. Humanity was not a problem to solve. It was a force to respect. And Lyra Hale was no longer just a symbol. She was proof. One part remained. The choice. The silence after the battle did not feel like peace. It felt like a pause. Emergency lights dimmed across the academy as systems stabilized. Damage reports streamed in from every sector of the station. Hull breaches sealed. Fires extinguished. Casualty numbers compiled. Lower than expected. That alone shocked the council. Lyra Hale stood at the edge of the command platform, watching the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, the hostile fleet was retreating, licking its wounds, carrying stories that would spread faster than any official broadcast. They had come for a prize. They had met resistance. Not just from humans. From everyone. Instructor Malrex approached her slowly, his posture heavy with exhaustion. The council wants to speak with you. Lyra nodded. Of course they do. This time, the council chamber felt different. No raised voices. No confident certainty. No talk of containment or oversight. Just tired eyes. You coordinated the defense, one counselor said. Without authority. Without command codes. Lyra shrugged slightly. People listened. Why? She met their gaze. Because I listened first. Another counselor leaned forward. You could have taken control. Declared authority. You didn't. Lyra's voice remained calm. That's not how humans survive. Silence followed. Then Malrex spoke. You asked how humanity fits into the galaxy. He gestured to the damage reports, the casualty lists, the footage of species fighting side by side. This is how. The council adjourned without argument. That alone made history. In the days that followed, the academy changed. Joint training resumed, not because it was mandated, but because students requested it. Humans trained alongside aliens as equals. Not mascots. Not threats. Equals. Lyra returned to regular classes. No special treatment. No isolation. But nothing was the same. Students asked questions now. Real ones. About Earth. About human history. About why humans fought the way they did. Lyra answered honestly. "We're not special," she told them. "We just didn't have a choice." Messages poured in from across the galaxy. Some praised humanity. Some warned against them. Some asked for alliances. Human leadership responded carefully, calmly, without threats. They had learned restraint too. Weeks later, Lyra stood once more in the sparring hall where it had all begun. The floor had been repaired. The walls polished. But the echoes were different. Malrex watched from the platform as Lyra sparred with a Virelian student half again her size. It was clean. Controlled. Mutual respect evident in every movement. No humiliation. No laughter. When the match ended, both fighters bowed. Malrex felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Later that night, Lyra sat alone in her quarters, staring at the folded flag above her bed. She thought of Earth. Of cities rebuilt after wars. Of people who had learned, again and again, that survival wasn't about domination. It was about adaptation. A soft chime sounded at her door. Malrex entered, holding a datapad. "The council has voted," he said. Lyra looked up. "And humanity has been granted full academy status. Permanent representation. Shared doctrine development." Lyra exhaled slowly. "There's more," he added. "They want you to stay. As an instructor, after graduation." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled faintly. "Good," she said. "There's a lot they still don't understand. And you'll teach them." "I'll show them," Lyra replied. "The same way humans always do." Malrex nodded. "By example." Outside the academy, the galaxy adjusted. Old assumptions crumbled. New doctrines emerged. Militaries trained differently. Diplomats spoke more carefully. Not because humans demanded it. Because ignoring them was no longer an option. Years later, historians would argue about when the balance truly shifted. Some would point to treaties. Others to wars avoided. But those who were there knew the truth. It started the day a human girl stood in a sparring circle and refused to be broken. The day restraint was mistaken for weakness. And the galaxy paid attention too late. Or perhaps, just in time.